morning. I am Jessica Neill, and I'm coming to you today from Indiana. Dr. Phil Howard, that was introducing Dr. Berry today, was my former superintendent, and I've had the privilege of getting to go to Dr. Berry's school a lot of times and work with him quite a bit. And I'll tell you, it's a tough follow for sure. It was an inspiration this morning. And I love Dr. Berry so much. So today I'm talking to you about cultivating classrooms of hope is what I called this, because sometimes we feel like we notice what's happening in our schools with our teachers. We notice it feels like things are getting harder in some ways. So I just want us to think about like some things that we notice about our schools, and since we're a pretty small group, I would love for you guys to kind of just out loud brainstorm with me. But things that I've been noticing as a principal, I'm currently an assistant superintendent. This is my first year in that role, and I've been a principal in my previous role. And what I was noticing in elementary school was a lot of suicidal ideation, a lot of self-harming, a lot of kids saying that they want to die at a young age, just alarming kinds of cries for help. And I definitely have come to believe that behavior is communication. That's what it is. So if we can look at behavior as communication, then it helps us to kind of think about why or what are these kids trying to communicate to us. So if you guys have some things that you've been noticing in your schools, there's a chair right here if somebody wants it. If there's, like, what have you guys been seeing? I've been seeing explosive behavior in young kids, a lot of numbing behavior by older kids. What do you guys see?
More withdrawn than, there's always a few kids that aren't, but now it seems
Feels like a
more
lot.
prevalent, yeah.
A huge lack of motivation.
Yes, definitely.
They don't see themselves in the future
Right.
of what they want to do at their current spot.
What about with
Current
staff and teachers? What are you seeing or feeling yourself?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed?
Can't get into it.
There seems like more on our plate than ever before.
Defeated.
Anything else that you can, I've seen people leave the profession, quitting without another job. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. Lots of that. Okay. Hopefully I can work PowerPoint. So now, I already told you behavior is communication. That's all it is. It's communicating a need. It's sometimes communicating something that the person, whether it be an adult or a child, cannot communicate with words sometimes. So it's coming out in ways like shutting down, maybe, I call that rock brain sometimes, where your brain just turns into a rock, you're just not moving, you're in concrete. So we have adults and learners who are coming from hard places and have been through hard things. It's not just kids. We all, I'm 45, I've had a lifetime and hopefully longer to go, but lots of experiences that are hard. There are things in your life, lose parents, go through COVID, that with or without the pandemic, our lives were hard before. We went through hard things. We have things with kids, our own kids. We have things with families that are hard. We have kids and adults who have been through hard things and have come through from hard places. You have probably already heard about the ACEs study. That's the Adverse Childhood Experiences. That's what it's based on. It occurred in the early 90s. And to be honest, the study itself was with a predominantly middle class, mostly white, mostly educated population of people. And that study found that like 4 out of 10 have at least one of these adverse childhood experiences. They include neglect, abuse, dysfunction, divorce is on this list. Having a parent die is not on this list. And I lost a parent at a young age, and I think that was definitely an adverse childhood experience. So even this study did not encompass all the hard things. And we know that 4 of 10 had one, and actually it's 4 of 10, I think, have more than that. But I didn't put my notes on here, I should. But anyway, it's a lot of people have, I think it's actually 6 have one, 4 have more than one. So that is a lot of people coming with hard experiences to our classroom, to our schools that are working there. We have people that come from hard things. We know from this study that those hard things have an impact on our lives. It actually can imprint on our DNA and pass generationally. So even when we do a great job as a parent of meeting the kids' needs, we still bring baggage to them even through imprinted DNA, which is, it's pretty new science, but it's quite, it can be overwhelming, but also I want you to know that there's hope and there's healing that can come and that we can help our kids with. So I think early death, obviously we want to change, and even though statistics are statistics, it doesn't mean it's our destiny. So like, yes, there is statistics saying that if you have more than 6 ACEs on the ACE score, early death, 20 years of life expectancy comes off. And again, that ACE study didn't include racism, it didn't include poverty. There are all of these things that are more generational and historic that affect what we bring to the classroom. The other thing that is also influencing our kids' ability to have success is attachment. And this is something that I didn't know about, and I don't like that it says mother and child only, because it's not just mothers. This responsibility is not just on mothers. One caregiver is all that a kid needs to be successful. So whether that's a father or a grandparent, I just try to disregard that mother. This is just something off the internet. But I want to tell you that only 60% of our kids, and that's nationwide, have secure attachment. And that secure attachment is built in the first year of life. Even the first 2 months of life are the most crucial. And let's think about the first 2 months of life. There's a lot out of that caregivers control. Sometimes our kids have a rough birth. Sometimes they're in NICU. Sometimes our mothers or our caregivers are postpartum. Like, that's a real part of this process. Sometimes those people are in difficult situations. In the U.S., we don't have paid maternity leave in most places. And so that stress, to pay the bills. So all of these things they're influencing our kids' ability to have that secure attachment. Kids with secure attachment have the foundation needed for mental health, for healthy, emotional confidence. It says on here, I think they can explore that curiosity that we think all kids are born with. Unfortunately, that curiosity is a privilege. Not all kids have that safety that they built in that first year of life where they can have those experiences of curiosity and interest in everything. Like, that motivation that you're talking about is part of that secure attachment. It's feeling safe enough to take risks, and 40% of our kids in America, and some of you work in high poverty schools like I do, and that number is probably even higher. So how can neuroscience help us? Because it can. So I like to use this book called The Fantastic Elastic Brain to read to kids about their brain, because once they start to understand their brain, but honestly once adults start to understand their brain, it helps tremendously to have compassion for people, because there's a lot about our biology that you just can't circumvent. Sometimes we expect people to do things that are impossible for their brain to actually do. So you have this brainstem part that is your natural breathing, heart beating, all those things that you really don't have to think about. And this graphic, it's called the Reptilian Brain. It's that survival. All those survival things are in that brainstem. Then you have the emotion feeling part of your brain, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and then this prefrontal cortex, this top part of your brain, is the decision-making center of the brain. That kind of is what differentiates us from other animals. I think about my dog. My dog can't make a choice. Do you want this treat or not this treat? My dog wants all the treats, you know. My dog does not like to go out in the rain, so she can make that kind of choice. But I don't think my dog has that same prefrontal cortex that we do probably. So when a kid is struggling, like make a good choice, sometimes that's impossible. So I kind of like to think about like, would I ask my dog to make a good choice? No, probably not. And so so I use this, you guys have probably already seen this, it's really popular, this model of a brain, that's your hand. So this part over here is your thinking part, your prefrontal cortex. I teach kids this and adults, but it has the most power on adults, I think. And then when our emotional part of our brain, something happens and triggers that amygdala, we flip our lid, and then we go to this downstairs brain where we're using that survival instinct. So we can train ourselves to use strategies to keep that lid from flipping, and where we can keep using our prefrontal cortex. And some people, you probably know people that are calm no matter what. They maybe they don't have a high ACE score, maybe they have worked really hard through therapy, or like starting to get a toolbox of strategies to keep them. They're getting enough sleep, they're getting enough food. Think about yourself. What causes your lid to flip? I know for a fact I didn't have that much sleep last night because our plane got delayed. Like, it was a big thing, and I only got 6 hours, and I'm an 8-hour girl. So if I cry today, that is to be expected, because that is something I do when I'm really tired. I feel like overwhelmed. The littlest thing that is not a big deal yesterday when I had a lot of sleep will be a bigger deal today. And I kind of have to prepare myself for that. Like, okay, I might need to take a deep breath. I might need to have an extra snack today. When I'm really cold, I'm also not so safe. I don't feel real safe. I like, warm is comforting to me, but there's other people that also hate, like, I like a weighted blanket sometimes in the winter because that makes me feel really calm, but other people hate that. So every single person is different. So think about what really triggers your amygdala. What makes your lid flip? Anybody want to share something that you're like, this is something that can really put me over the edge?
Running behind.
What?
Running behind, like being late.
Mine too. Like if I'm on a schedule, or like I can tell I'm gonna start yelling at my house when like when my kid is really slow and we're supposed to be somewhere, or just it can really cause me to flip my lid. Anybody else?
And with that, but in the mornings specifically, it's worse than, if I'm behind in the afternoon, I'm not stressed. If I'm behind in the morning, I'm a mess.
So good to recognize that for yourself. Like that, maybe that morning part is your brain is not fully online. You're more down in the your brainstem more often, or your amygdala is a little more sensitive at that time. Anybody else? Anybody get hangry?
When someone uses a sarcastic tone,
Okay.
that's like instant.
That is so good to know too. And so hopefully the people that have relationships with you are, they understand this about you, so it doesn't come out of left field. I'm pretty new at my job, so like navigating like where people's trigger points, what triggers people to feel, and honestly it's feeling unsafe, right? So the coldness feels like a little unsafe. The sarcastic tone maybe feels a little unsafe because you can't read people very well. So most of that comes from feeling safe. But definitely food for me too. If I'm really hungry, I just can't think straight. There were times as a principal I hadn't eaten all day because it's a real crazy job. Anybody else in here? Principals? Any teachers? What do you guys think? Good. So I'm sure as a teacher too, you feel like you've just been running at 1,000,000 miles an hour all day and you forgot to eat a snack, or you haven't been drinking enough water. Those things can definitely cause you to kind of flip your lid or lose your whatever. So when you have stress, whatever it is, it might be a sarcastic tone, it might be the morning, then that stress causes you to flip your lid, and then you do this fight, flight, or freeze. I read in the book What Happened to You, there's also a flock. That is an interesting which really, I was like, I've never heard about this, but if you've ever been in a middle school classroom and the teacher kind of redirects someone and then they all gang up against you, I can see that flocking, like especially in middle school it feels like. So these are some things that happen when you are in that fight, flight, or freeze. You might, like when you're using your prefrontal cortex, you can stay grounded, you can stay connected, but you flip your lid, you kind of go in that fight, flight, or freeze. You might feel some anxiety, your heart might beat a little faster, you might feel trapped, you might shut down, which is what I heard someone else say that kids are doing. We're seeing a lot of dissociation, which I think is that lack of motivation. I just want to freeze. I don't want to try anything. I am feeling unsafe. That is fight, flight, or freeze in that brainstem. So hopefully if nothing else today, from this presentation, when you're with kids or with your family or with your friends and you notice those behaviors, you're going to say, oh, they flipped their lid, their amygdala is firing, they're going down into this downstairs brain, and what can I do to help them get back online? Because that doesn't feel good. None of these things up here feel good to me. I don't want to be like that. And so I want to try to get back. And I use zones of regulation, which I constantly say I'm getting back to green, ready to learn, ready to talk, ready to make decisions. So how do we make changes? It's not enough to just know this. I feel like this is information we've kind of been coming around to for quite a few years. Probably in the last 5-6 years for me, this has been kind of in my radar. I used to be a behavior modification girl where like set a goal, we're going to track to the goal, we're going to make gains, and we're going to fix the problem. But what I noticed was I was still like plateauing with a kiddo and then back to the start over and over again. So even though we did a good job of scripting, we knew exactly what to say, we're going to be very consistent, we're going to have rewards and consequences, I would make a little gain and then go right back. So I thought, whatever this is, we're not solving any problems. We are just putting Band-Aids on it. It felt like to me. And maybe anyone, I see some of you nodding, are feeling that way. Like the same kid that threw the chair, we would do a little better, and then the next year we would start over again. It felt like, and suddenly when they get to middle school, it seemed magically fixed. So I'm not sure what that's about. So the thing that has helped me, this was the beginning of my journey in this. I read this book, Lost at School. Anyone read it? Good. That changed, there was a lot in the book, that's great, but the thing that changed for me is people do the best they can with the skills that they have. And that, I didn't say kids, because I think the book says kids, but I believe this about every person. So if it's a teacher, if it's an administrator, if it's a kid, they're doing the best they can with the skills they have. So if we're seeing this behavior, that's communication of something, they don't always know what it is, they can't communicate it in words, we're going to try to dig into that with them, but people do the best they can with the skills that they have. This brought me a lot of hope because I'm like, oh, there's skills? If there are skills, we can teach skills. I'm a teacher, we can teach skills. I didn't feel like I could teach. I couldn't fix the baggage. I couldn't fix the problems at home. I couldn't fix the environment other than the one I have control over at school, but sometimes I don't even have that. Like sometimes there's environment things I can't fix at school. So if I believe that people are doing the best they can, that kids are doing the best they can, that teachers are doing the best they can with those skills, then let's think about what skills we can build to bring them success. And I realized when I was doing all that scripting, when I was doing rewards and consequences, I wasn't teaching any skills. I was just manipulating the situation to make the kids successful, but not teaching skills. So that's why we kept coming back in that pattern. So Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris wrote the book, The Deepest Well. Anyone read that? Awesome. It's a very great book. So I highly recommend that. I have it in the resources page. So, she, in an article with the New York Times, said that there are 6 ways to heal the brain of these hard things, the hard places. And these reminded me of, like, here it is, a roadmap for helping our brains have less sensitive amygdalas, less flipping of the lids. Dr. Lori Desautels is a professor at Butler, which I'm in Indiana, Butler's in Indiana, so I get to see her a lot. And she constantly says, unregulated brains cannot co-regulate. So, what that means is if I don't do the roadmap to keep myself regulated, then I cannot help anyone else keep that regulation. I cannot help anyone else keep that prefrontal cortex online. So, on the days where I haven't had enough sleep, I didn't eat enough food, that's probably not the day where I get in it. I need to tap out, ask for help, get a friend to help me either regulate and get myself back to green, or let someone else step in and help this child, this adult who is offline today. So, sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness. Mindfulness is that ability to be present. You can work on mindfulness a multitude of ways, but breathing, taking a walk, talking with someone, those are all mindfulness strategies. Sometimes I think people are a little like, ew, that's a weird term, doesn't mean yoga. It could mean yoga, but it could mean a lot of things. So that's just being present in a situation. When I'm in the middle of a hard thing, whether it be with my family or whatever, I find myself kind of obsessing about that, and I'm not able to be present with my work, or if it's at work, I'm having trouble being present with my family. So that mindfulness is that learning how to be present in the place you are. Mental health, like making sure that you're taking care of, not just mental health, but physical health. Like, are you making your doctor's appointments? Are you checking in with someone regularly? There's some research that says, like, the talking and walking with a friend is one of the best mental health things you can do. Like, just taking a walk, because that exercise is a repetition. Like, you're making one step, then another step, then another step. Your brain loves repetition. It's a pattern-seeking device. And so that rhythm, anything with rhythm, like if you just clap your hands, if you're having kids, if you have like a lot of dysregulated kids, like having them use a drum, like anything with tapping or rhythm is going to start regulating your brain into that nice rhythmic, I can relax a little bit and get my brain back on. Healthy relationships is, to me, the most important thing. I think that walking and talking is both that rhythm and healthy relationships. So the research says that just one caring adult in the life of a kid can change the trajectory of that child. One caring adult. It doesn't take, a team, a web. We know that when kids go through hard things and they have a support system, a community, a school community, a classroom community, that they will be able to heal and thrive. This is not a hopeless situation. Hard things are not a hopeless situation. We all have them. We all do. So, trauma-informed, trauma-responsive environments have 3 parts to them. These are the 3 components. So if you're thinking like, what do I need in my classroom to make sure that we can learn? Because I do want to say that this has to be true before learning can take place. If you have the privilege of regulated brains, only regulated brains in your classroom, then go hard at those academics, because that is sticky brains that are ready to learn. But these are the 3 things that we have to have. Felt safety. Now, felt safety, that was a new term for me. What does that mean? I think our schools are really safe. Like, we have locked doors. I have a resource officer in my school. We have really safe schools. It feels like every precaution. We're careful about the playground. Like, no one can get hurt on it. It has to be like 0 to 5, 5 to 12. We have to have these signs on the playground so everyone's safe. The place is safe, but we did an activity with kids that said, here's a map of the school. Show me where you feel the safest. Here's a map of the classroom. Show me where you feel the safest. Show me the places you don't feel so safe. Guess where they were? Gym, cafeteria, the big spaces where there's less supervision. Didn't feel so safe in those. Felt safety is, you might be safe, but do you feel safe? And a sarcastic tone doesn't feel safe. It feels like you're making a judgment about me, or that you don't think I'm competent. It can be interpreted that way. That's the story in our head when we hear that. So felt safety is different than safety. You can be safe but not feel safe. So I was pretty dismissive of that whole concept at first, because I'm like, come on, you are safe. Like, you're safe. But if you don't feel safe, that's a huge problem. So making sure kids or adults feel safe, then healthy connections, feeling like you belong, is a part of healing that and keeping our brains online, prefrontal cortex activated. And then finally, self-regulation. So that ability to keep ourselves calm is a skill. So what are some connecting strategies? I hope that you have some ideas when you leave here of how to make the people around you in your life, whether it's your family or your friends or your classroom. Proximity is a connecting strategy. So I saw a lot of videos of kids coming in the door with a sign, and they get to pick, do you want a hug, do you want a high five, do you want an elbow bump? Those proximity, you're touching each other, and healthy touch is part of proximity, but it gives me the weird vibe, so I don't want to write that on there. But I love hugging kids, and I love you have to be careful, because I have my own personal kid has some weird things about, she doesn't like anyone to touch her, her collarbone. The doctor, is always trying to check your lymph node, I don't know what this is, glands, whatever, and she's freaks out. Her heart starts racing. She does not like anyone to touch this part of her. So it drives me crazy, because I like to do this. I love you. I like to do this, and she's flinches. And I have to remember her safety is what's important. Not the way I want to love her, but the way she needs to be loved. And so that healthy touch is so good, but also we have to respect kids' boundaries. So I had a kiddo, the principal was struggling with a kid 2 days ago. Feels like yesterday, but I lost a day. And he was definitely escalated, and he's in kindergarten. So he is a little guy, and I asked him, is it okay if I touch your back? And he's like, yes, please. Yeah. I mean, some kids will take your hand and pat themselves with, they're asking for you to comfort them. And maybe that's the way their parents do that, or maybe, but some kids, if you touch them, they flinch. So just be careful about that, because felt safety is what we're going here for. And if touching them makes them feel unsafe, then we need to respect that. Eye contact, this is a hard one for me, because a lot of kids on the spectrum, I don't like demanding eye contact ever, but looking at someone in their eyes is an instant connection. So also respecting boundaries, but trying really hard, can you look at my eyes? What color are my eyes? And then if they are willing to, you're not going to force them to make eye contact with you, but giving them opportunities to connect with you in your eye, because it is biological. We connect when we look at each other in the eye. Voice quality, this is another felt safety. If we are coming in hot and we start yelling or we're, like so frustrated, like you can hear that in your voice. So like again, unregulated brains cannot co-regulate. So we want to make sure that we are regulated before we try to help someone else regulate. Mirroring is one of my favorite new things. Maybe you guys already know it, but like when a kid is on the floor throwing a fit, I try to go to where they are. So sitting on the floor with them, not mirroring their yelling or anything like that, but it's instant safety, instant connection if you look like they do. So if they're touching their face, I try to touch my face. Like really think about that mirroring. Your brain has mirroring neurons. Like sometimes you know this. Someone comes in a state and you instantly match their state. Like they're anxious and like, oh, I'm anxious too because I don't know why, but I feel it. Your brain automatically mirrors other people. So another thing that can help with this mirroring is your breath. So if you start really concentrating on your breath and you're sitting side by side with a kid that's escalated, then their breath will start to match yours. Just pro tip on this, your exhale needs to be longer than your inhale. So really concentrate on inhaling and then long exhale. So your brain gets the oxygen it needs. So that is like if you can just concentrate on a longer exhale and you can't help but match somebody. Like I just breathe one time and I can all see you like you're mirroring me and you don't even realize it. So your calmness, if you can keep calm and start engaging, this is something not research based, but just my observation. I've been noticing the principal at the preschool that I work at, they're in timeout, like they have to be removed because they've thrown a fit, and the kid cannot de-escalate. Like they're throwing everything, and they say, if you can just sit in this chair for like a certain amount of time, then we can whatever. But if their brain is hyper-focused on throwing everything, they cannot think about anything else but throwing everything. So I've noticed that if I give them something that's cognitively engaging, I can like trigger that back to upstairs brain. So like downstairs brain, no thinking's happening. They're just throwing everything. But if I'm like, hey, will you do this puzzle with me? Hey, will you play this game with me? Will you color this paper with me? And then they have something to focus on other than the throwing, because it's almost like obsessive. I don't know what I want, but I just want to throw everything, or I just want to tear everything, or I just want to push on something. And when you notice that, you're like, oh, I noticed you want to push. Can we push this wall? Let's try to see if we can push this wall. And those wall pushes are activating that muscles, and you're starting to come up out of that brainstem. It works almost every time. And you're going to be surprised when you come in the hallway and you see a kiddo like screaming and laying on the floor, and you get down on the floor, they're like, what are you doing? And then they're starting to wonder, like, why are they on the floor? We're not supposed to be on the floor. Let's get up. Like they just start, like it starts making a big difference. I also noticed some nonverbal kids, or well, not nonverbal, but not a lot of communication skills, like playing peekaboo. The things that we did with our babies that are mirroring, like that's what we were doing, right? Like when you're like trying to get your baby to like do what you do, smile or laugh or cover your eyes, and they do it too. A lot of our kids have missed out on that attachment engagement. So playing those things, even though it seems ridiculous, they're 6 and that's what we do with 1-year-olds or 2-year-olds, they instantly engage with it. They can't help themselves, and then they stop that, whatever that communication is. Playful interaction, if you can make it funny, it helps them get out of that rut. If you could, I'm pretty good at making fun of myself, but some people just aren't. So if I can make fun of myself, then the kid's like, oh, well, she's not coming at me with a lot of armor. Or if you can just try to turn it into, oh, that's silly. Like, just something that takes the weight off of whatever that behavior is, because most of the time they're humiliated why do I keep doing this? You hear them say that. Some of them, the older kids, are like, why do I keep, I'm stupid. I hear that in the middle of a behavior. I'm stupid. I'm the worst kid in this school. I'm so bad. Well, if you can turn into some playful engagement, some game, hey, can we both push this wall so hard that it falls over? I don't think we can. You want to try? Then that playful engagement can build a relationship. Being flexible, like the kid throws a fit over doing a work, some sort of work, try to be flexible. That, okay, how about we do this in an hour? Let's do something else. Can we be flexible with the demand? Still hold the demand, but be flexible with the timing. We don't want to just give it in to kids, and I'll talk about that. It's not about winning, but we want kids to have those social skills, those emotional skills, to use their prefrontal cortex. Distraction, I talked to you about that in calm engagement. Empowering strategies. Remember back when we talked about felt safety, giving people and kids, both adults and kids, feeling empowered over yourself gives you safety. When you feel out of control, like nothing's in your control, I do not feel safe. Like, I don't feel confident. Like, someone's giving me a bunch of directives, I don't feel like I can meet, I don't feel confident, I don't feel safe. So if you can give kids choice about some of the things that they're doing that for whatever reason they're communicating to you that they don't want to, well, I don't know why you don't want to, but we can probably figure out a way to keep some of the power on your side. Like, make sure that they're in control of them. And I like to say that to kids a lot. You are in control of you, and I am in control of me. So let's see if we can figure this out, okay? And them feeling like I'm trying to control them is often a trigger. So routines and rituals, that structure, making sure, I told you already, our brain is a pattern-seeking device. We love patterns. I like for the morning to go a certain way. I want to have my bag packed, I'm going to have my coffee, and then I'm going to walk out the door with my lunch. Like, I do things that way because it's safety. Same thing for our classrooms. Buddy talks a lot about surprise and delight, and novelty does engage our brain. It is fine. But if we go to novelty, every single thing, surprise and delight, like 80,000 times in a row, then our kids will be overstimulated. Like, think of field day. Do you guys have that?
Yes.
It's like exhausting because it's so out of routine that no one knows what to expect and you just all feel unsafe. Like, what's happening next? Where are we going? What time is lunch? Like, I don't know any of those details. And so that does not feel safe. But the routines, you keep everything routine and then throw in surprise and delight for that engagement or that novel experience. But like routines for the morning are very important, routines for transition. Hydration, making sure that kids and you have water every 2 hours. There is I have access to this gauge that they put in the bathroom, like it's color for what color your urine is. Like if this is what color it is, you're not drinking enough water. And they're teaching kids, like, you have to have enough water for your brain to work. So that's something I never really thought about. I'm not a big water drinker. Like, I don't know why, but my brain works better when I drink water. All of us, it's biology. It's not really a choice. So making sure hydration is part of your routines. Everybody, we're going to get a drink of water, and then we're going to do this, so that we're ready to go. Having a snack, blood glucose levels, if they drop, you cannot think. So making sure that we keep, if kids eat breakfast at your school, they do at mine, that's like 8 o'clock, and then some of them don't eat lunch until 12:15. So that they're not going to be able to hold that prefrontal cortex and learn for all those hours without something, like, it doesn't have to be a lot, it can be healthy, it doesn't have to be sugar, but carbs of some sort or protein, and teaching kids about that, like this, they don't seem to know when they're hungry sometimes. Sometimes they'll say, I'm not so hungry, I need a snack. But for me personally, sometimes just eating is comfort. Like, I'm feeling stressed, I eat. That's not healthy for me, but there is something about my brain that feels better when I just have a snack or something like that. Some of our kids in foster care, you will notice, I'm sure you notice that they hoard food. They're really, like, sometimes they take extra. Having a basket of snacks, hey guys, if you're hungry, this is for you, or this is for everyone. Oftentimes, at first, they eat them all, like, just to see if you're gonna really let them. But then they start to feel safe and they don't need to go to the snack basket all the time. If you can wait it out, I know it's expensive, but maybe your PTO or somebody can help you, or, you know, volunteers, your kids' parents can, some of them can probably help you out with the snacks. But having some sort of snack, even if they don't eat it, knowing it's there can be spell safety. Physical activity, lots of times we do brain breaks, those are great, but make sure that you do something calming after that so that you're not up here in the red. Some of your kids need physical activity and that calms them down, but there's not a lot of kids like that. Do you notice your most hyper kids, you say run around the gym 3 times and then they're more hyper than they were before? They need a different kind of calming activity. That breathing, I'm an elementary person, but there's lots online for all ages of kids. So I like to do breathing strategies that are silly because they engage with me instead of just like, let's take a deep breath. They don't really want to. So like a square breathing is a typical one. I like to do horse breathing, like you breathe in and see if you can hold your, like, make that longer than me. Like we're kind of having contests to see who can have that longer exhale. And then I like to do sparkler breathing, and you're like, have some sparklers and you put them in a bucket of water and they sound like this. So you're putting a kind of an auditory part to that exhale so that you're measuring that the exhale is longer than the inhale. And instant calm. You feel so much better if you take a deep breath. Sensory needs. You have kids that are seeking sensory needs, and sometimes they're triggers. Do you guys, anyone here have like a smell trigger, like you just can't concentrate, like certain smells like just drive you insane? Like maybe someone's perfume is too overpowering, or something like burnt bacon or something. It's just like, I can't think of anything else. It's triggering that kind of olfactory nervous system. So like smells can be it. In the book, What Happened to You, the Oprah Winfrey, anyone read, oh, did I already ask you this? Did you read that book? You gotta read this. I highly recommend it on audiobook because it's Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry, and they're talking, it's called What Happened to You, and it's about looking at that lens, like your behavior is communication, and they kind of do an interview of each other. So the audiobook is super good because it has clips of the Oprah Winfrey show involved. So it keeps you really engaged. I have a long commute, so that is an excellent book. But kids, in that book, there's an example of a kid that was having a hard time in a class, and they couldn't figure it out. The teacher is so nice and was treating the child with such respect, but the kid just could not make a connection. And come to find out, like, the kid had a traumatic background. There was an abuser that wore Old Spice, and the teacher had this same deodorant. It's not the teacher's fault, and the kid didn't even know. The kid had no idea, but the therapist noticed that another person, and the therapist himself was like, oh, I smell something that reminds me of something, and then they kind of figured that out. And so it's no one's fault that these things happen, that someone's triggered. Like, you might say something in a sarcastic tone that might be hard for you to hear. That's not anyone's fault. It's just something that we need to, like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want you to feel unsafe. I want to make sure I watch my words and help you feel safe. So, sensory needs, weighted lap pads. Anybody using those? That's been a real help for me for kids with a lot of energy. It's just, you can get it for $20 or so, and it's just a weighted lap pad instead of that big blanket that feels like it's getting so dirty, dragging it around. It's just a lap pad. It hangs on the back of the chair. When the kid needs it, it just goes across their lap, and it's like, I feel a lot safer. I feel like I can sit in my chair a little better. There's lots of good ideas like that, sensory kind of things. In my experience, like the school I'm at right now has a sensory room, and it is so overwhelming. Like there's so many choices of like this and that and this. So what I typically do is give some, I know if they are high energy, they're in the red zone, and I want them back to green. So I'm gonna give them a choice of 1 or 2 calming things to get back to green. I have a kid that is so down, so blue, so like not motivated, so tired. We're gonna do something high energy to get that kid back to green. They're yellow, maybe that yellow zone, anyone use zones here? I'm gonna show you a slide about it later. The yellow zone is more like in between green and red, so it doesn't need to be something so calming as a weighted blanket or like calming music or headphones. It could be, but giving kids a few choices. Remember, they're not using their prefrontal cortex, and your dog can't choose which treat. So your kid is not gonna be able to choose which sensory item. They're going to want them all, especially if they're in the red zone, and they're like gonna be so overwhelmed with all the choices. So giving them like these choices, here are some choices that I think will help you. And then you can, as you get to know your kids, you know what works for them. So that self-regulation is part of emotional intelligence. That is a key, and your emotional intelligence is more connected to success outside of school than actual IQ. So that self-regulation is just one part of that, but that's knowing yourself, knowing what your triggers are. That part is what is before self-regulation comes self-awareness. I am feeling this. On having a feelings chart is a good idea because our kids don't always know how they feel. They feel out of sorts, but what does that mean? So helping them know how they feel. So external regulation, that like, I'll give you a snack. That's external regulation. Then co-regulation, I will sit with you. I'll give you a choice of 2. What would you like? Where the kid has more ownership of choices. And then self-regulation is the last part of that. So until we externally regulate and then move to co-regulation, then the kids can, or adults can learn those self-regulation. Like, oh, I can do this for myself. I can take a couple deep breaths. Sometimes we're just like, you know the strategies, do some deep breaths. And we haven't done all these stages. So that's how it kind of is a scaffolding approach to self-regulation. What time am I supposed to be then?
You're good to go, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so teaching these regulation skills, this is taught. So teaching them about sensory things, using sound like music, calming, white noise. Sometimes people have sound machines in their classroom or classical music. That can help. Having a visual, like the zones, which I'll show you in a second. Having a time for deep breaths. These are all things that can be taught, and eventually kids can take them over for themselves. I know that taking a walk helps me. Can I take a walk? Can I take a break? I'm feeling unregulated. And teaching the kids that language. So this is basically zones. Like you're teaching kids these kind of emotions. So you're helping them identify emotions. This is a program. You can Google it, and it's a book. And so you're kind of teaching kids, I'm very angry. I'm in the red zone. How do we get to green? And so you're scaffolding that approach. And green is the goal because ready to learn. How can we be ready to learn? I'm feeling really sad. I'm feeling sick. I want my mom. You're in the blue zone. How can we get to green? Let's think of some ways. And oftentimes in our classrooms, like we'll put a Velcro board underneath of choices of things that kids can do to get to the green zone. Ready to learn. And the important part here is to be successful about this. It's not just understanding where kids come from and having that compassion for kids and for adults. That is important. That's kind of that nurturing part of what we do. And we've all seen people who are very nurturing, but their classroom is a total disaster. The kids have no boundaries. They are doing whatever they want. The teacher is upset. Or parents, we've seen parents like that, where they're very nurturing, but they do not have that balance of structure and nurture. It's a balance, both are important. So, yes, we want to have empathy for our kids and compassion for the hard things our teachers are going through, but we also need structures. We also need expectations. We need routines. Life value terms is part of TBRI. Anybody heard of trust-based relational interventions? I have that resource for you. You can check it out. It's out of Texas Christian University, and their life value terms that have really helped me. So when I see a kid that is rough with another kid, I'm like, guys, we're gentle and kind. And I say gentle and kind like 100 times a day. We keep our hands to ourselves, or we follow directions quickly. Like these terms, if we can have these terms over and over, our brains are pattern-seeking devices, it starts to stick. Oh, we need to be gentle and kind. 4-year-olds say, gentle and kind to each other. They can do that. So sometimes this one comes a lot in my house. Are you asking or telling? and please ask, not telling. And so do you need me to model that for you? So it's not about lowering expectations because kids have had hard things. It's teaching them how to meet those expectations. It's kind of a different lens. They don't come to you already knowing how to meet your expectations. We have to teach them. So using those kind of life value terms, they're called other things in other places, but like I have a friend that's like, number one, follow directions quickly. Like there's some things that we just say, and if we can be really consistent with those terms, it helps kids know what we need. Limits and boundaries are important. Here's the line. Kids thrive with boundaries. Please don't cross it. This is what will happen. And then here are some resources for you, and I shared that little link, and it has all of them in there in the handout. So Hope Light is that TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. It is, once you start, there's a podcast, there's like a lot of things that you can dig into that, but it's a good support for teachers as far as helping you feel empowered to make a difference. Dr. Lori Desatel has a ton of articles on Edutopia, so I put that in the link. And then Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris is an awesome resource. And then this book, I highly, highly recommend. Any book by Dr. Perry is excellent. The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog it's more written like a memoir, so it's like lots of stories that will help you connect. So these are really good resources that I found. It's kind of everything I know is like a conglomeration of all these people, and so I found it to be very useful for me. And if anything, making a difference for kids is awesome, and that's the goal. But changing my lens helped me feel more empowered, more able to have a roadmap to help someone than always feeling helpless. Like the problems are too big. I don't know how to solve kids' depression problems. I'm not a doctor. But using these strategies has made a huge difference for me. So wrapping that up, is there any questions or anything before you go? There's my email and my phone number. If you text me, I'll text you back. I believe in you. You wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be in this field if you weren't here to make a difference, because that's the only purpose that we have, really. So thank you for all your hard work and what you do. And if you need support, just let me know.